Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
First one is titled, Pyramid Scheme Scammer Ends Up Paying in the End. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was trying to enlist into the military. I ended up not joining, but that's a story for another time. At this point, I was led to believe I was about 4 months away from leaving for boot camp. I was running out of savings, and needing a part-time job for some spending cash while I waited around. So I did what any enterprising 20-something would do, and searched Craigslist for jobs. I normally hate sales jobs, especially those based on commissions, but figured it would be a great way to earn some extra cash short-term. Found a few job listings that looked promising, and put out some applications. A few days later I received a call from David. He was opening up a new store and needed associates. He liked my resume and asked if I'd be available for an interview on Friday morning. I was very upfront with him, and let him know that the distance was a bit more than I'd normally drive for a retail job, and asked what he was offering for an hourly rate, to see if it was worth the drive. He told me that they were planning on offering an hourly rate in the mid-teens, along with commission. Seemed like an okay deal, so I agreed to be there Friday at 8 a.m. Friday arrives as a cold, rainy day. I wear a nice shirt and tie, and drive in heavy traffic to the address David provided. I knew the area from a previous job, and eventually found the strip mall I was looking for. However, I'm not seeing any signage for the company name that was listed. There is, however, one empty space with no signage and 2 people inside. Okay, maybe they haven't gotten the store set up yet. No big deal. I had arrived early, knowing how bad traffic can be in that area. While in my car, I witnessed a young lady in business casual dress remove a sign from the window stating, "Retail space for rent. Call 1-800 blah blah." Okay, a little weird, but maybe it's the first day in the space. I walk in about 5 minutes early, and immediately my BS meter goes from yellow to the highest level, black watch plaid. The tables are all simple plastic folding tables. The kind college kids would buy for beer pong while on a shopping trip to Target. The walls are plastered with laminated charts featuring tons of dollar signs, smiling faces from stock photos, and an organizational chart showing an all too familiar shape. A pyramid, damn it. Alright. Might as well have fun for a while to wait out traffic going home. The young lady in the dress approaches me, introducing herself as Cindy. She welcomed me to company name, and asked me to have a seat. She sat at her desk, another plastic table, and pretended to go through paperwork. However, she was really just shuffling papers around. We get to chatting, and I ask her how long she's worked for David. She says she's been his secretary for about 6 months and that I'm going to love it here. Eventually, a guy walks out of the back office. Early 30s, clean cut, wearing an ill-fitting suit from JCPenney's. As he is walking over, all smiles, Cindy says, "Oh, Dennis. Our newest recruit is here." The guy stops in his tracks and gives her a cold stare. "It's David, Cindy. We've been over this." He turns back to me and gives me his brightest, hard to find good help these days, smile. David sits me down and welcomes me, saying they are going to start with a group interview and has me sit down in a circle of chairs. Eventually more people come in and sit down. David gets up and begins to thank us all for coming. He tells us about an exciting new opportunity from Cutco. He pulls out a set of knives, and explains how with his company we can make as much money as we want, all while setting our own hours. He even pulls out a textbook, saying about how this company's revolutionary tactics have even been featured in college textbooks. He opened to a page, his hand covering parts of it, making sure we can all clearly see the words, Cutco, in large letters on the page. Sad to say, a lot of the other interviewees were very impressed by this. One pregnant girl seemed very excited that she could work around her pregnancy and upcoming birth. David was going on and on about how much money he's made and how hard workers will rise to the top quickly. At this point, David said he needed to take a quick phone call, and gave us 5 minutes to have some coffee, chit-chat, whatever. As he stepped away, he left his college textbook behind. Oops. So I pick it up, find the earmark page, and read. As I thought, it was all about pyramid schemes and it had Cutco as one of the largest examples. It goes on to talk about how these are essentially scams, not economically viable, etc., etc. So I decide to share this all with the group. I explain how pyramid schemes work, and how he's just scamming us. They seemed incredulous, so I said when David gets back, to ask them about what we need to pay to get started. That finally got everyone to realize what was going on. David walks in a few minutes later, and one of the girls in the group asked David what we need to get started. Well, all you need is your first set of knives to demonstrate. You can sell that on directly or have them order one and keep that as your demo kit. Doesn't matter. Just have to pay the startup fees for it. And that's when all hell broke loose. One kid started to get up and tell him to go duck himself, saying he's wasting our time and he's in a hole for trying to pull this crap. The pregnant girl is crying because she thought she found a place that would allow her to work despite being pregnant. David is clearly confused and flustered, and asking who told them all this. When it becomes apparent I'm the wrench in the machine, David gets upset and starts telling me to leave. People are yelling at David. David is yelling at me. Cindy is trying to tell everyone she never met David before today and didn't know what this BS was. Eventually we all walk out leaving David behind. As I'm walking to the door, I see, leaning against the wall, the sign that was in the window before, retail space for rent. Call 1-800 blah blah. As I get into my car I dial the number. Eventually I get through to a person, and ask about the property for rent at the location of David's company. The nice lady on the phone apologized, saying they had just leased that property out. I asked if she knew how long the lease was for, as I was really interested in the property. She said she wasn't sure, they hadn't done the official paperwork yet. They were on their way to the space to sign everything with the leaseholder in a few hours. I told her everything that had just happened to me, and about David using the space for a pyramid scheme. She got extremely upset, saying that this stuff happens all the time in the industry. They will go to sign and last minute the leaseholder will decide to opt out, after using it for some fly-by-night operation. She thanked me for the info, and I thought that was the end of that. Or so I thought. A few weeks later, I received an email from David, telling me how I ruined his life. About how the property management found out what was going on, and weren't refunding his down payment on the space. Saying he violated a clause in the paperwork he signed to hold the property. How he knew I was the one who called because I'm a terrible human being, etc., etc. Now he was out thousands for the space and supplies, how he only wanted to give us jobs and help us. It was a long, very angry email, with several things said about me and my mother. So I called 1800 blah blah again, spoke with the same lady I did before, and she was very interested in an email from David where he essentially admitted to what he was trying to do. Said it would help them all in the legal proceedings. And don't you know I was more than happy to send that email along to her. Her lawyer said it should be an open and shut case at that point. I like to think I'm a helper. Next one is titled, Dealing with a Gas Thief. Several years ago I lived in the northwest coast of Puerto Rico. It's a very relaxed area, with tons of good restaurants and lots of green space. My apartment was on a cliff, not far from the water. The electric infrastructure was a bit old, so when it was rainy season, we'd lose power for a few hours at a time. Not a big deal, I had a gasoline generator. Enter a new neighbor. He lived 2 doors down from me, and drove an amazing custom Chevy van from the 70s. All it needed was an epic airbrushed wizard on the side. Sadly though, that's where anything good about him ended. I caught him taking the gas out of an orange jug I'd leave outside in case the generator ran out. Although I saw him do it, and called him out on it, he denied it and played stupid. So after the second time, I took all of the gas in the jug, filled the generator with it, and put the rest in my car. I then went to the nearest gas station that had diesel and filled it up with diesel. A few days later, I am woken up by a tow truck backing up to pick up his now disabled van. I looked out the window and you could see the anger on his face. He moved out the next month, and from what I gathered from talking to people in the community, he was a general piece of crap human and what happened to him was deserved. Next one is titled, Annoying regular tries to scout teen models, finally slips up. I, male, 26 at time of story, used to work at a coffee stand inside a large retail store. It was an industrial, semi-rural town, so we were kept busy as one of the few coffee stands in the area. Some people expected us to act like a full-service cafe. An elderly customer complained that we didn't have porcelain for the espresso, and one guy in particular would stay in the seating area for hours at a time, using the Wi-Fi and working from his cell phone and laptop. He always ordered a small blonde roast as a pour-over. There's nothing wrong with using the store's Wi-Fi, but blonde roast also liked to try and talk to the baristas when he wasn't actively on the phone and brag about how he traveled all around the country for business, though he said he lived in the area. This was 2016, and he would also try to engage me in political debate. When it snowed that winter, he walked in and out of the store while making his calls and tracked salt all over the cafe floor. I did my absolute best to be polite, stay neutral, not get fired, etc., but I ducking hated this guy. I think he chose to do his work at a cafe so he could be seen being important in public and be known as a man about town. We were often busy and understaffed, but if there wasn't a customer directly in front of the counter and he was feeling chatty, he loved having us as a captive audience and would make it harder to keep up with cleaning and refilling tasks. He tried to have the attitude of a big spender, but consistently ordered one of the cheapest things on the menu. Several of my coworkers were girls in high school, usually working evenings and weekends. Blonde Roast liked to hang around on weekends, and claimed to one of my coworkers at some point that he ran or worked for a modeling agency. I thought it was weird, but because of how our breaks functioned and limits on how long minors can work, it was rare that the high schoolers were ever behind the counter alone. One night though, I was closing with one of the high schoolers and went to take my break. Blonde Roast was sitting with his laptop but not bugging us. It was around 7:30 p, so while it was a little slow there were a fair amount of customers still in the store, and I would be back in 15 minutes. I return from my break, and Blonde Roast packs up and leaves shortly after. My coworker then tells me that while I was gone, he had called her over to look at his laptop and show her pictures of women in bikinis and lingerie, telling her that he worked in teen modeling as well. He had also given her a business card. This girl was 16, the man was late 40s, early 50s. I asked her to talk to the closing manager that night, and thankfully she listened to us. Blonde Roast had been annoying for months, but had never done anything that could get him removed. But on top of being a creep, offering his business card counted as solicitation and was not permitted by the company. I wasn't there to see it, sadly, but I heard that the next time he came in several people from upper management walked up and served him with a piece of paper banning him from the premises or requiring that he cease and desist passing out business cards. In any case, he scurried out without arguing and I never saw him again. I wish I remembered his real name so I could look him up and see if he's been arrested for something yet. Blonde Roast was also friendly with a different coworker who was fired several months earlier for sending inappropriate text messages to a female supervisor half his age. But that is a different, non-revenge story. Edit. This was in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I am thankful every day I don't live there anymore. Last one is titled, "You should have given me the job instead." I would like to start off by saying that I am not a spiteful person, but after reading a post regarding someone's revenge on a former boss, I was reminded of a former butt-hat manger that I had a hand in getting fired. I am a chemist by trade. I work in a lab mixing chemicals together to make viable products for consumers. I once worked for a company that made all types of plastic. They were in serious need of a chemist, and a friend, whom as the VP, recommended I interview. The job was to be the lab manager. I would be responsible for 3 other chemists and 2 QC employees. I went through the very long interview process and was offered a job. However, it was not the job that I interviewed for. The management team decided that I was too young. I was 25. So they gave the job to someone else who was older. That person would be the butt-hat manger. I was given a chemist job. It was a good job and it paid well, so whatever. So my first day on the job I am introduced to Butt-Hat. Upon meeting him, he seemed to relish in the fact that he got the management job over me, and immediately started to show it. The lab was going through somewhat of a transformation. The previous manager was a pack rat. As in, he kept every single piece of paper that was ever handed to him. So my first assigned task was to go through every single piece of paper to see if it was relevant. I had to physically remove each piece of paper from the box and scan it over for said relevant info, even though the box clearly said 1972 on it, and all it was pamphlets from shows or old chemical brochures. I still had to go through it. This took me weeks. I was the only person assigned this task, everyone else did their normal job. In the meantime, he was busy showing up for work late, leaving early for his 2-hour lunch, disappearing for an hour and a half after lunch, and leaving work early. He maybe was seen visible working for 1 hour a day. Fast forward to me finishing my assigned task. Butthead finally allows me to do some actual chemistry work. This is when I found out that he has no real experience working in a chemistry lab. Or being a chemist. How do I know? Because Butthead decided to mix a couple of chemicals that don't play nicely with each other, and then proceeds to throw it in the microwave. 60 seconds later we were short one microwave and had a new respect for the fire extinguisher. He followed this up with leaving industrial-sized mixers on high speed while unattended. Big no-no. They could kill someone, starting another small fire in the plant and completely ruined an industrial-sized mill. After a couple months of his unsafe lab practices, they continued, I started noticing some changes in his personality. Specifically towards people that he deemed a threat to his authority. He got into a very loud verbal argument with our first production manager, who then quit, then proceeded to get into an almost physical argument with one of our salesmen, whom also quit. Once those two were off his list, he turned his attention towards me. Now for a little backstory. I mentioned earlier that I was friends with the VP. I still am. I have worked for him before and I enjoyed it a lot. Hence the reason I applied for the job. I am the type of person that shows up early and leaves late. Always have, always will. I take great pride in doing good work. Well, Butthead took our friendship and my work ethic as a threat to his authority and made it his life's goal to duck with every single part of my day. He would assign me jobs to do, I would do them, and then he would berate me in front of everyone about how I did it wrong. Then he would tell me how to do it right, and I would fix my mistake and do it exactly how he told me to, and he would come back and berate me again in front of everyone about how it was still ducked up. He did this for everything. The best part about all of this was the end of day meetings. These meetings consisted of me going into his office, closing the door, and him yelling and swearing at me for at least 30 minutes. Topics you ask? Think of one. It was probably my fault in some way. This went on 2 to 3 months until I cracked. I cracked because he got physical, as in shoved me when my back was turned. Now, I am not a small person. I am athletically built. I played football, I ran track, and I lifted weights. I don't know what got into him, but it got into him in a big way. I was shocked. I had never had a boss do that before. I don't know why, but I just let it happen. So when he was done screaming in my face, I just left and went straight to the bar and had a drink, and another, and another. That was the day I decided that I had had enough. I wasn't putting up with any more BS. I am admittedly not a very creative person when it comes to revenge, so the only type of revenge on a boss that I had ever seen, way before Reddit, was from the movie Office Space. I literally did what that guy did. I just showed up and did absolutely nothing. I came and went when I wanted. I took 45-minute smoke breaks, 2-hour lunches, came late and left early. This drove Butthead insane. And every time he tried to talk to me about it, I did exactly what the guy on the movie did. I just never stopped and walked right past him. Every time he wanted another meeting, I just never showed up. I just went home instead. So after a week or two of this, I happened to be wandering around the office and I stumble into my VP friend. He seemed stressed out and I inquired as to why. The safety inspector is here and he will be doing a walkthrough of the plant. He said. He told me to let everyone in the lab know that he was here and not to duck up. His words, not mine. Well, because I had literally quit doing what I supposed to do and Butthead had to do what I was supposed to do, and seeing that he is a walking ducking disaster, I took off for my 2-hour lunch. I wander back into the plant after my 2-hour lunch, my food was excellent, and poo has hit the fan. Every big wig in the company is in there and they are all freaking out. I walk up and the first thing the VP asked me was, "What did you see?" Being friends with him, I replied, "I didn't see crap, what happened?" So word on the street is this. Butthead decided that he owned the place that day and went out and used one of the industrial stand-up mixers, think KitchenAid mixer that makes cookies but 8 feet tall, to mix something in a 1-gallon container. I was supposed to be working on this project but obviously wasn't. Now, these things are made for containers that hold 500 to 1,000 gallon containers. So he puts this container under this gigantic mixer and realizes that the container can't be strapped down with heavy-duty chains. Side note. You need to strap down the containers. These things spin at 3,000 to 5,000 revolutions per minute. I have seen 1,000-gallon containers spin that weight 4,000 pounds. That's some scary shit. So what does Butthead do? He grabs a roll of duct tape and tapes that crap on, of course. Once he plasters that witch with duct tape, he cranks that mixer up to full blast and walks away. Also a big no-no. For those of you that don't know, all machines in any industrial shop have to manned at all times, no exceptions. About 2 minutes into this act of stupidity, in walks the safety inspector. One of the production guys sees this gigantic fine running and promptly runs over and shuts the machine down right as the safety inspector sees it. Over walks the inspector to inquire into what the hell is going on right as Butthead walks out of the lab freaking out. Asking who shut off his mixer and of course cussing and swearing. He then proceeds to turn the mixer back on, cuss out the production worker, and asks the safety inspector, "What the duck are you looking at?" and walks away. So once I got done laughing my butt off, I calmly inform my VP and all the other big wigs that I am not surprised. I inform them of their lost microwave, the fires, the destroyed mill. They knew about the mill, they just didn't know how it happened. I told them about the confrontation that occurred in his office, and I told them the truth about some other things they didn't know about. Bottle of scotch in his desk, drunk on the job, etc., etc. The fire in my VP friend's eyes was burning hot enough to destroy worlds at this point, and he turns around and tells everyone that there will be a meeting regarding today's events in the morning and orders everyone, 40+ people, to go home. We show up the next day and Butthead was nowhere to be found. The point of the meeting was to inform everyone that Butthead was not allowed within 500 feet of the building and that if we saw him near the building, we needed to call the police. What I found out later was that the police already had him. When my VP friend went to fire him, Butthead got physical, and the security guards with my VP friend got physical back. He was charged with a whole slew of crap, too much to remember. Later that day I was promoted to lab manager and given a raise. We celebrated with a glass of scotch that found in Butthead's desk. Thanks for listening.